Joining me now is Adam Coleman, a great friend of the program, founder of Wrong Speak Publishing, who has just released the second edition of his book, Black Victim to Black Victor. Urge you to go out, look for that on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Adam, thank you so much for joining us on the U.S. Report this week. And I want to have a chat about the big news of the week, these insane protests, and how it seems like these kids who have done all this stuff, vandalized these campuses, caused classes and graduations to be canceled. If I'm reading this right, reports in the New York Times are suggesting that District Attorney Bragg is not going to prosecute anybody who was responsible for this. Tell me, as somebody who's a great believer in personal responsibility and consequences, what message do you think this is sending society when people can behave like this and then wind up getting away scot-free?
Well, ultimately, you don't teach them much of any lesson. What you're doing is rewarding bad behavior. And if there are things that they were doing on campus that are against the law, they should be prosecuted like anybody else. So what you're doing is coddling them. You're coddling these college students who are young people who are supposed to be building themselves up to enter the workforce, to enter the world alone, independently. And what you're doing is saying, no, you get to act like children whenever you have whenever you experience something that you don't like. You get to do these things and there's no punishment. And we act like why there's so many questions about Gen Z. Well, it's because the adults in the room have allowed them to behave this way most of their lives. And so Bragg is doing much of the same. Bragg is doing it for ideological reasons, but he's doing much of the same.
But I mean, this whole point about ideology poisoning everything and people not taking responsibility, these young people, these Gen Z people who are going to university, supposedly they're on this track to be sort of the leaders of our society, but you've raised a great point in your latest piece in the UK Telegraph about how Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness plan is being wasted, and they're giving all these woke universities and all these kids who've made bad choices about their degrees, well, they're letting them off, but they're also encouraging the breeding of the types of aggressive behavior we're seeing and this sort of political activism and radicalism. Again, it seems like, I don't know whether this is an unintended consequence or an intended consequence of the program, but it seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. I just want to say that I have empathy for a child who has a choice of going to college, and the only way to move forward is taking out $80,000, $100,000 worth of debt. It's an unfair system that is set up. However, the problem that's at hand is that Joe Biden, even if he wants to alleviate the problem for them, he's not correcting the system. He's putting a Band-Aid on it, and he's making us pay for it by doing so. And ultimately, by not fixing the actual problem, which is price gouging by the universities, which is even from the aspect of going after state schools, right? How come the government in these states aren't going after the state schools for gouging students going to these universities? Beats me. Maybe there's some sort of kickback going to these politicians, and that's why they avoid it. But Joe Biden isn't addressing the actual problem. The actual problem is the price of college. It's not that a debt exists. The debt is just the after effect of the problem.
Right. And I mean, isn't there also this just general problem now where because you've got this highly expensive degree that people are going for, and they're also flooding the market with them, there's a mismatch between, the price, I guess, and the utility and the value. So you talked about these people who go into debt and young people trying to make a better life for themselves. I have complete sympathy for them, but it feels like if they were sold any other product and got this result for the price, the people selling them that product would be taken to court and sued.
Exactly. I think what we're seeing is the old way that we saw college is not the way that college is today. So much in the same way how we saw Harvard in such esteem and Harvard is falling apart today, but we still have that same old mentality about Harvard and Columbia and all these other Ivy League institutions. We see college as an institution of rare selection, like how we used to see it, right? If you got into college, it was a big deal. Now college is a racket. College is an economic model. You can go to college online. You can go anywhere and someone can give you a piece of paper and charge you the same amount of money or whatever, it doesn't hold the same value because there's not as much scarcity in it. There's plentiful. It's very plentiful. And I say this as a father of a child who is 18, who's looking to go into the trades. Everyone tells you when you go into the trades, there's tons of money there. Why? It's because there's not enough people in the trades, right? So the scarcity makes electricians make 6 figures off the bat, plumbers 6 figures off the bat, because there's not enough. So there's this imbalance when it comes to it, and all these kids are getting wrapped up in this college racket, and they're left with compound interest loans and signing these deals at the age of 17, not understanding what they're getting into.